You actually came looking like that? 8 years, and everything looks the same.
I heard life didn't work out for you.
My husband owns 3 companies. What do you have?
Peace.
Marcus, you're the billionaire?
I didn't come here to prove anyone wrong. I came to show that success speaks louder than revenge.
Welcome to Story with Black, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button.
The ballroom erupted in laughter. Still driving that old pickup truck? Vanessa's voice cut through the music, loud and sharp. She raised her champagne glass high, letting the light catch it. 8 years later, and you still look like the man I divorced. The crowd around her laughed with her. Old classmates, old faces, old memories all pointed at one man like knives. Marcus Coleman said nothing at first. He simply smiled and checked his watch. He was not embarrassed. He was counting minutes. Because somewhere across the city, a black convoy was already moving through traffic, police lights clearing the way, heading straight for this hotel. In exactly 3 minutes, everything in this room was about to change forever. Vanessa had no idea that the man she was mocking now controlled more property in this city than her new husband could ever dream of touching. She had no idea he had built an empire from nothing while she was busy telling everyone how far he had fallen. And she had no idea that the woman about to walk through those doors was going to change the entire story, and maybe even end her marriage before the night was over. But to understand how far Marcus had come, you have to go back. Back to the beginning. Back to the man he used to be before any of this was possible. 8 years earlier, Marcus was a contractor on Chicago's South Side. He fixed roofs in the summer heat. He poured concrete in the freezing cold. He worked from sunrise until his hands cracked and bled, because that was the only way he knew how to survive. He believed in something simple, something his grandmother taught him as a boy. Work hard. Stay honest. Sacrifice now and one day it pays off. Vanessa believed in something else entirely. She wanted the life she saw online, scrolling late into the night. Big houses with white columns. Designer bags with gold buckles. Vacations she could post to strangers who would never actually know her. Every time Marcus came home tired from a 12-hour shift, sawdust still on his boots, she looked at him like he wasn't enough. Every time he tried to save money for their future, tucking a little away each week, she called him small. She compared him to men she had never even met, men with flashy cars and empty promises she saw flash across her screen. Marcus tried to explain. He told her real wealth takes time. He told her a strong foundation is built slowly, brick by brick, not bought overnight. She stopped listening a long time before she finally packed her bags. One rainy night, she told him she deserved better. She said the words like she had rehearsed them. Then she left him for a man named Damian Cross, a smooth-talking investment consultant who wore expensive suits and made big promises about a glamorous life he never actually had the money to give her. Marcus did not fight for her. He did not beg. He signed the divorce papers with a steady hand, and he walked out of that house with nothing but a bag of clothes and a heart that felt like it had been hollowed out. That night, he sat alone in his truck outside an old, empty building he could not even afford yet. Rain hit the windshield. He stared at the cracked windows of that building for almost an hour, and he made a decision that would change his life forever. He was done being laughed at. He was done being told he wasn't enough. He was done shrinking himself so other people could feel bigger. He started small. He bought that same rundown building using every dollar he had saved, plus a loan the bank almost refused to give him. People laughed when they heard. They called it a waste of money. They said he was throwing away what little he had left on a building that even pigeons had abandoned. Marcus ignored them. He fixed the building with his own 2 hands, working nights and weekends until his knuckles bled again just like they used to. He rented it out. He saved every dollar of profit. Then he bought another building. Then another. He turned forgotten streets into neighborhoods people actually wanted to live in. He turned abandoned lots into apartments, into small shops, into playgrounds, into hope for families who had almost given up on their own block. Year after year he reinvested everything back into the work. He did not buy fancy cars. He did not throw parties or chase attention. He worked. He built. He grew quietly while the rest of the world looked the other way. By the time 8 years had passed, Marcus Coleman was no longer a contractor struggling to pay rent on a 1-bedroom apartment. He was the founder and owner of Coleman Urban Development, one of the largest black-owned real estate companies in the entire country. His projects stretched across whole cities now. Luxury apartments, shopping centers, technology parks, affordable housing built specifically for families who needed it most, families that reminded him of the one he grew up in. His personal fortune had grown past $3 billion. And yet, he still drove that same old pickup truck whenever he wanted to disappear into a crowd, unnoticed and unbothered, just a regular man buying coffee on a Tuesday morning. So when the invitation to his 10-year high school reunion arrived in the mail, Marcus almost threw it straight into the trash. He did not need to prove anything to anyone. He had already proven it to himself, alone, in empty buildings at midnight when nobody was watching. But his closest friend, Jasmine, stopped him before the envelope hit the bin. "You're not going to prove them wrong," she told him, holding his gaze steady. "You're going to walk in there and see how far you've really come. That's not for them, Marcus. That's for you." Marcus thought about it for a long time, turning the invitation over in his hands. Then finally he agreed. He arrived at the luxury hotel ballroom alone. His fiancée, Dr. Naomi Brooks, had been delayed downtown, accepting a humanitarian award for her charity work with underserved hospitals. She had promised him she would come as soon as she could get away. Marcus wore a simple navy blue suit, nothing flashy. No expensive jewelry catching the light. No bodyguards trailing quietly behind him. No luxury car waiting outside the front doors. To everyone watching that night, he looked exactly like the man they remembered from 10 years ago. Ordinary. Unimpressive. Easy to laugh at, easy to dismiss. And that is exactly what happened. Vanessa spotted him the second he walked through the door. She glided over in a tight red dress, a crowd of old classmates trailing behind her like an audience waiting for the show to start. "So," she said, loud enough for the whole room to hear, tilting her head with a smirk. "Still fixing houses?" Marcus smiled calmly. "I still work in construction," he said, his voice even and unbothered. The room burst into laughter, sharp and cruel. Vanessa pulled a man forward, gripping his arm with obvious pride. "This is Damien," she announced. "He manages millions of dollars in investments." She looked back at Marcus with a satisfied smirk stretching across her face. "What do you manage? A toolbox?" Someone in the crowd joked that Marcus probably still rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment somewhere. Another voice laughed that he probably still drove that same truck because he simply couldn't afford anything better after all these years. Marcus did not argue. He did not correct a single one of them. He simply stood there, letting them believe whatever made them feel a little bigger, a little better about their own small lives. Because nobody in that room knew the truth. Nobody knew that Marcus now owned 3 luxury hotels in this very city, including the exact building they were standing inside at that very moment, drinking champagne under his chandeliers. Nobody knew he owned hundreds of apartment complexes, entire office towers downtown, and full neighborhoods currently being rebuilt from the ground up, block by block. Nobody knew about the private foundation he had built in complete silence, quietly funding college educations for black students across the entire state. Nobody knew his company was worth billions of dollars. He simply listened. And he waited, patient as ever. Among the guests that night was a woman named Denise. She worked for the city planning department now, reviewing permits and development proposals every single day of the week. The moment she saw Marcus standing near the entrance, she froze completely, her drink stopping halfway to her lips. She had personally approved the permits for one of his billion-dollar developments just a few weeks earlier. She recognized his face instantly from the paperwork, from the meetings, from the photographs attached to his company files sitting in her office right now. But she said nothing. Not yet. She simply watched from across the room, holding her secret close, waiting to see exactly what would happen next. Vanessa was not finished. She leaned closer to Marcus, her voice dripping with cruelty now, low enough for only the people nearby to hear clearly. "You couldn't even afford me back then," she said. "What makes you think anyone successful would ever marry you now?" Marcus looked at her, calm and steady, not a single muscle in his face moving. "I'm engaged," he said simply. The room erupted in laughter again, louder this time, echoing off the high ceilings. Vanessa rolled her eyes and called him a liar right to his face. She demanded he prove it, right there, in front of everyone watching. Marcus glanced at his watch again. Right on time, exactly as planned. Outside the hotel, headlights swept smoothly across the driveway. Two black SUVs pulled up in perfect formation, security stepping out first, scanning the entrance with quiet, practiced precision. Every head near the windows turned to look at once. Then the doors of the ballroom swung open. Dr. Naomi Brooks walked in wearing an elegant green gown, her presence commanding the entire room without saying a single word. Several guests gasped out loud. They recognized her instantly from television interviews, from magazine covers, from news segments celebrating her groundbreaking work as one of the nation's top cardiovascular surgeons and the founder of a major healthcare charity that had saved thousands of lives. She walked directly through the stunned crowd, straight toward Marcus, ignoring every wide-eyed face turning to watch her pass. She wrapped her arms around him and kissed him gently on the cheek. "I'm so sorry I'm late," she said softly, just for him. The governor's charity gala ran longer than expected. The entire ballroom fell into complete, total silence. You could hear the ice melting in someone's abandoned glass. Someone near the back finally found their voice and asked Marcus quietly now what exactly he did for a living. Marcus answered simply, without any pride in his voice at all. "I develop cities," he said. Before anyone could fully process what those 3 words actually meant, Denise finally stepped forward, breaking her long silence at last. "Actually," she said, her voice shaking slightly with nerves, "he owns Coleman Urban Development." Phones came out immediately, dozens of them at once. Fingers typed his name into search bars with shaking hands. And within seconds, article after article filled their screens, one after another. Forbes, Business Insider, CNN. Headlines calling him the youngest black billionaire real estate developer in America. Net worth $3.8 billion, printed right there in black and white for everyone to see. The laughter in the room was completely gone now, replaced by stunned silence and wide, disbelieving eyes darting between each other. But Denise was not finished speaking yet. She revealed something even his closest classmates in that room never knew, something that made several people cover their mouths in shock. Marcus had anonymously donated over $50 million to rebuild their old high school brick by brick. The new science building standing proudly on campus. The updated sports complex where kids now trained every afternoon. The technology labs every current student used, every single day without ever knowing whose money had built them. Every scholarship handed out over the last 3 years, quietly funded from an account with no name attached. All of it came from Marcus. And he had never once asked for his name to be attached to any of it, not on a plaque, not in a newsletter, not anywhere at all. The room stood frozen, staring at the man they had spent the entire last hour mocking without mercy. Then from the back of the room, a sharp voice cut through the heavy silence. A local businessman recognized Damien's face across the crowd and stepped forward, saying it out loud for everyone gathered to hear clearly. Years earlier, Damien had been investigated for misleading investors in a failed scheme that cost several families their entire life savings overnight. He had avoided criminal charges by the slimmest margin, but his reputation had never fully recovered from the scandal. One by one, guests began quietly stepping away from him, whispering behind cupped hands, putting distance between themselves and a man they suddenly did not want to be seen standing beside. Vanessa stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom, watching everything she believed about her own life collapse in front of her, piece by piece. The man she had left behind had built an empire from nothing but his own 2 hands. The man she had chosen instead had built nothing but lies wrapped in an expensive suit. Damien slipped quietly toward the exit and disappeared through the doors without saying a single word, leaving Vanessa standing completely alone in the middle of a room full of people who used to be her friends. The same classmates who had laughed at Marcus only minutes earlier now surrounded him from every direction, asking for photographs, asking for business advice, asking for a chance to reconnect after all these years. Marcus politely declined every single request, one after another, without ever raising his voice. Vanessa finally approached him alone, her eyes filled with tears she could no longer hold back. She apologized, her voice breaking on every other word. She admitted she had chased money instead of character, chased appearances instead of substance, and she had thrown away the one person who actually meant something. She asked him quietly if he had ever hated her for what she did to him. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, studying a face he once thought he would spend his whole life beside. "No," he said finally. "I simply stopped needing your approval." He thanked her, which confused her completely, her eyebrows pulling together. He explained that losing her was the exact moment that forced him to become the man he was always capable of becoming, the man he might never have found any other way. Then he took Naomi's hand, and together they walked out of the ballroom, leaving behind a room full of people who finally understood something important that night. True success is never the loudest person standing in the room. Outside, his old pickup truck sat exactly where he had left it hours earlier, parked awkwardly between two luxury cars that together cost less than the land his company had quietly purchased that same week. Naomi looked at the truck, then back at him, a small smile pulling at her lips. "You own $1 billion company," she said, laughing softly. "And you still drive this old thing?" Marcus laughed too, opening the door for her like he always did. "It reminds me where I started," he said. "Some things you don't trade in no matter how far you go." They drove off into the night together, leaving the hotel and everyone inside it far behind them. But 3 days later, everything changed again. Marcus received a phone call that pulled him right back into that world he thought he had already walked away from for good. Denise, the woman from city planning, was on the line, and her voice sounded tense, careful, like she was choosing every word. She told him someone had filed an anonymous complaint against one of his biggest developments, the very same project she had personally approved weeks earlier. Investigators were already asking questions downtown. Paperwork was being pulled. And the account linked to the complaint traced back to a name Marcus knew all too well. Damian Cross. Marcus sat in silence, his old truck idling at a red light, staring straight ahead at nothing. Somewhere in this city, a man with everything to lose and nothing left to protect was about to try to take away everything Marcus had spent 8 long years building. And this time Marcus knew, it would not be settled quietly inside a ballroom with a smile and a calm voice. This time it was just beginning.